Bodies of water have many names. Some mean the same as others, and others are entirely different. The smallest body of water is the brook, a natural stream of water that is found above ground and is often called a creek as well. A brook is usually known as a tributary, which is a small body of water that naturally flows into a large body of water. But this is not always the case. Some people also call these smallest bodies of water streams, although streams can flow underground or even in another body of water, like the Gulf Stream. Brooks, creeks, and streams can be tributaries of rivers. A river is a larger body of water that flows above ground in a particular direction, and usually has a large volume of water in it. This varies, of course, according to rainfall and/or snowfall totals. A river will always have more water in it than a stream. Rivers often flow into other bodies of water. For instance, the Mississippi River flows into the Gulf of Mexico. A gulf is a large area of a sea or ocean that is partially enclosed by land. Looking at a map of the Gulf of Mexico will help you understand this idea. A gulf is a sheltered area of shoreline into which water flows and gathers. It is the largest kind of body of water with this description. The smallest is a cove. In between is a bay. Rivers also flow into lakes. A lake is a large body of water that is totally surrounded by land. A pond is the same exact thing, only with less water and a smaller diameter. No standards exist for how big a pond can become before it is officially termed as a lake. A lake or pond can also have a cove in it. A cove is a small sheltered area of shoreline into which water flows and gathers. A cove that is rather large is called a bay. Moving up in size, a sea is a large body of water that is surrounded by land or attached to another body of water. The Caspian Sea is one that is surrounded by land. The Mediterranean Sea is one that is attached to another body of water, in this case the Atlantic Ocean. Why are these bodies of water seas and not oceans? Geographers don't really have an answer, other than what I've already said. An ocean, which is the largest body of water on Earth, is generally thought of as having no boundaries. The Atlantic Ocean has Europe and Africa to the east, and North America and South America to the west. The ocean is still considered to have no boundaries because to the north and south is just more water. Patagonia is full of excellent rivers, lakes, and spring creeks that make this place of the planet a famous and prodigal land for fly fishing. This land is well known by fly fishermen that come as far from Europe and North America. They fly overseas with the sole idea of making their dreams of fishing a reality of dreams. The Nile River is known as the longest river in the world. It has two major tributaries, the White Nile and the Blue Nile. The Blue Nile being the source of the most of Nile's water and fertile soil, but the White Nile being the longer of the two. The White Nile rises in the Great Lakes region of Central Africa, with the most distant source in the southern Rwanda. The northern section of the river flows almost entirely through desert, from the Sudan into Egypt, a country whose civilization has depended on the river since ancient times. Most of the population of Egypt and all of its cities, with the exception of those near the coast, lie along these parts of the Nile Valley, north of Aswan, and nearly all the cultural and historical sites of ancient Egypt are found along the banks of the river. The Nile ends in a large delta that empties into the Mediterranean. The Nile River was a lifeline of the ancient Egyptian civilization, with most of the population and all of the cities of Egypt resting along those parts of the Nile Valley lying north of Aswan. The Nile has been the lifeline of Egyptian culture since the Stone Age. There are many fun facts about the Nile River. For example, did you know that the Nile River has a length of 4,184 miles? The Nile also gets its name from the Greek word Nilos, meaning river valley. The Nile and its tributaries flow through 9 countries. The White Nile flows through Uganda, Sudan, and Egypt. The Blue Nile starts in Ethiopia, Zaire, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Burundi, and they all have tributaries which flow into the Nile or into Lake Victoria and Nyanza. The major cities that are located on the edge of the Nile and White Nile are Cairo, Gondorako, Khartoum, Aswan, Thebes, Luxor, Karnak, and the town of Alexandria lies near the Rosetta Branch. The major dams on the Nile are the Rosaires Dam, Sennar Dam, Aswan High Dam, and Owen Falls Dam. The Hudson River is a 315-mile river that flows from north to south through eastern New York. It rises at Lake Tier of the Clouds on the slope of Mount Marcy in the Adirondack Mountains, flows past Albany, and finally forms the border between New York City and New Jersey at its mouth before emptying into Upper New York Bay. Its lower half is an estuary, experiencing tidal influence as far north as Troy. The river is named for Henry Hudson, an Englishman sailing for the Dutch East India Company, who explored it in 1609. The Hudson River was observed by Italian explorer Giovanni di Verrazzano in 1524, as he became the first European historically known to have entered Upper New York Bay. The Gulf of Mexico is the 11th largest body of water in the world. Considered a smaller part of the Atlantic Ocean, it is an ocean basin largely surrounded by the North American continent and the island of Cuba. It is bounded on the northeast, north, and northwest by the Gulf Coast of the United States, on the southwest and south by Mexico, and on the southeast by Cuba. The shape is an oval and approximately 810 miles wide and filled with sedimentary rocks and debris. It is part of the Atlantic Ocean through the Florida Straits between the U.S. and Cuba. Tidal ranges are extremely small due to the narrow connection with the ocean. It was probably formed approximately 300 million years ago as a result of the seafloor sinking. Lake Michigan-Huron is the largest lake by surface area. It also has the longest lake coastline in the world. If Huron and Michigan are considered two lakes, however, then Lake Superior is the largest lake, but Huron still would have the longest coastline in the world. The world's smallest geological ocean is the Caspian Sea and has a surface area greater than the 6 largest freshwater lakes combined, and is frequently cited as the world's largest lake. The deepest lake is Lake Baikal in Siberia. It is also the world's largest lake by volume, and the second longest. The longest lake is Lake Tanganyika. It is also the second deepest in the world, after Lake Baikal, which is the world's oldest lake. The Black Sea is an inland sea bounded by Europe, and is ultimately connected to the Atlantic Ocean via the Mediterranean and Aegean Seas and various straits. The circulation across the 25-degree latitude line in the Atlantic Ocean between Africa and the Bahamas has become the benchmark for estimating the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, an important component of global ocean transport that carries warm upper waters into far northern latitudes via the Gulf Stream and returns cold, deep waters south across the equator.